It's good to have your company. Welcome to our small garden in Kent, southeast England. We are two amateur gardeners and plant enthusiasts.
Bonjour et bienvenue.
I love playing with the colour, texture and form of container plant arrangements, including annuals we've grown from seed. Whilst evergreen perennials, many matured from our cuttings, provide a lush backdrop and year-round structure in a plot about 33 feet long and wide. We focus on creating a pollinator-friendly space, and I've been chasing a red admiral butterfly around the garden this morning for a photograph. It's a classic displacement activity because there's a garden task I need to undertake, and will eventually do so with a tentative hand and a slightly apprehensive heart. Yes, friends, it's time to give the splayed and leggy bushes in the lavender rondel a hardwood prune to try and restore their formerly neatly mounded shape. And here's our summary of forthcoming things. Daucus carota. We're so glad we got her. I am absolutely loving the stylish colour gradient and form of this gorgeous umbellifer, a wild carrot cultivar called Purple Kisses. This stunning tiered fountain, with its charming toucans and parrot characters, has inspired an admittedly rather more modest tabletop perching place. Larkspur Misty Lavender has an adorably vintage enchantment, but is this pretty flower overpowered by bolder blooms in the garden? English lavender may survive drastic pruning, but there's no guarantee of success. I'll show you how I approach the task, plus we'll tell you which lavender to buy for soothing effects and which to avoid. Charmingly titled Purple Kisses is a beautiful ornamental variant of the wild carrot Daucus carota. It is not edible, just a delightful visual feast and easy to grow in containers as we do, or in beds and borders, although it may require some support. It also makes a pretty cut flower for layers of horizontal interest, and as you can see, a single plant throws up multiple stems bearing intriguing umbels that begin life looking like little green unripe raspberries, maturing into a swatchbook of textural shades from delicious deep maroon through flushing pink to apple white. Purple Kisses can be sown as a biennial in autumn to flower the following year from early summer. However, despite impressive hardiness, it hates wet roots through the cold season, which is why many choose to keep seedlings under cover in winter or defer until springtime sowing. We treat ours as an annual, which we germinated indoors this March on a sunny windowsill. It took just over a week for shoots to appear, although they may make you watch nothing but bare soil for up to 30 days. And to me they soon seemed such sturdy little things. The Daucus seedlings are the strongest rooted little sprouts I've ever had to thin out. When they reached about 10 centimetres tall, we took them outside and placed a cloche over them at night for the first week or so to acclimatise. This plant, growing in its own dedicated pot, has been the first to flower. The modest sized container is just over 12 inches high and the same in diameter, and the plant itself, exceeding precise measurement, is about 4 feet tall or 1 metre 20 and 18 inches or 45 centimetres wide. The other homegrown Purple Kisses are a little more delayed in their development, probably because they are sharing containers with other summer annuals such as Cosmos, competing with roots for nutrients and moisture, so they may not grow as quickly or as large as the solo plant, but will still be impactful enough to add plenty of charm to the container display. Purple Kisses needs full sun, moist, well-drained soil, is very hardy to below -20 Celsius or -4 Fahrenheit, and supports a host of wildlife with its nectar and pollen-rich flowers. The wild carrot species and its cultivars are known for attracting pollinators. In our garden, we see purple kisses is especially enjoyed by hoverflies, beetles, small moths, and green lacewings. Bumblebees do seem to ignore the blooms in favour of salvia, cosmos, and agapanthus. And butterflies flutter straight over them, heading for, well, the butterfly bushes. However, the other less glamorous pollinators like hoverflies and lacewings are equally important to the ecosystem, and many species help control pesky aphids and destructive larvae too. For birds in autumn and winter, purple kisses flower heads will go on to provide a plentiful seed source as they slowly contract into little woven straw baskets on stalks. I'll be saving some of the seed because I am sure we will grow these next year. Compared to last year's container-grown Amimagus, these blooms are far more numerous, so purple kisses seems to be a great umbrella for choice if you have a sunny container garden, or if you just love the slightly wild feeling but exquisitely painterly hovering clouds of flower kisses. In the walled garden west at RHS Wisley, a restful area which showcases the beauty and diversity of foliage plants, flanked by stylish yew topiary cones, stands this gorgeous fountain with tiered water dishes adorned with animated bird sculptures, toucans and parrots perched to drink and bathe in a convincing and charming cameo. It is a lively and perfectly designed water feature artwork, both elegant and endearing, fitting the space exquisitely. I love it so much, I even dream about it sometimes. So just in case any students of Sigmund Freud are watching, I am familiar with fountain symbolism. But honestly, this is just a dream about a truly beautiful garden feature. But a sculpture this lovely would cost thousands of British pounds. And I wondered, could I find a way to somehow distill even just a modest drop of the lovely essence of the Wisley fountain into an inexpensive feature in our own garden? Well, I gave it a go, and it did first involve the purchase of a parrot. He was the biggest expenditure at £24. Made of cast iron, he's a cheeky chappy and not too out of place in the garden, as we do get noisy ring-necked parakeets flying over the house. These exotic naturalised birds have been living in England since the Victorian era, so having blown the budget on our parrot, here's how I created a humble little homage to the fabulous Wisley fountain, with no water involved, just pottery and plants from the garden, plus some old paint and a few existing feathered friends to keep the parrot company. We bought the seeds and read the notes to put them in the freezer for 1 week prior to sowing, making germination easier. Young shoots appeared way back in March, grown on the sill inside. Potted on, they charmed us with their cottage garden vibe. The slugs do have a nibble. Stems tend to rather flop. We think they'd grow much bigger if not root-bound in our pots. For pollinators, I'm not sure they're very beneficial. I never see a forager. Perhaps it's just I've missed all. Our brighter flowers overpower their gorgeous vintage shades. They're subtle, but I'll miss them once the smoky colour fades. Our Folgate lavender bushes growing in the central rondel have lost their formerly compact shape, becoming leggy and splayed. This time last year, I was able to trim them into tidy mounds, leaving about 1.5 inches of green growth above interior woody stems, so that all through winter they maintained a pleasingly architectural appearance. They became floppy this summer, but of course all that mattered to the pollinators were the abundant flowers packed with pollen and nectar, because the lavender's blooming power was not compromised. The problem is simply one of garden aesthetics. But I'd love these 4-year-old plants to stay in good shape for many years to come, so I'm going to try pruning into hardwood in the hope of generating compact new growth. I've been putting this task off ever since the lavender finished flowering, because bare stems in summer are even less appealing than floppy ones. But hopefully short-term pain reaps long-term gain. I had finally got around to beginning this task when there was another distraction on the brick path. This is our second flying ant day of the season. It is a very vulnerable time for the departing ants, because insectivorous birds and hungry toads, even the juvenile ones, seize the opportunity for a meal. Fast food, if you will. In her Garden Chronicle of 1894, the American poet and writer Celia proposed, "The toad has indeed no superior as a destroyer of noxious insects, and as he possesses no bad habits and is entirely inoffensive himself, every owner of a garden should treat him with utmost hospitality." In the UK, our common toad population has plummeted by over 2/3 in 30 years, so these iconic creatures are a treasured presence in the garden. The ants dispersed, and it was time to refocus on the pruning session. Our Folgate cultivar is UK hardy, USDA zones 5 to 10, known as English lavender, despite originating in the Mediterranean. Its botanical name is Lavandula angustifolia. and other popular cultivars include Hidcote, which has a resilient compact form, Munstead, also compact and may bloom twice, Ashdown Forest on the taller side with an erect and neat habit, Betty Blue, a culinary favourite, and Royal Velvet. When dried, this has a delicious scent, to name a few of the hundreds of different varieties. We selected Folgate due to its compact habit and because it is one of the earliest angustifolia lavenders to flower, with intense violet blue blooms and potential for longevity. The beautiful lavender farm at Shoreham in Kent has productive Folgate fields planted 20 years ago. There is an element of risk involved in cutting into the hardwood, which is the pale woody stem beneath the fresh green or grey growth, because an excessively wet winter or early cold spell could prove detrimental, even fatal to the plant, and cutting does make the bushes initially more vulnerable to disease. But on the positive side, all these little pale grey buds on the hardwood are stems in waiting that should respond with a pruning initiated energy burst and growth spurt. If one cuts so far down that these little buds are entirely absent from the lower stem, the risk of failure will increase. I can see there are already leafy stems sprouting from the lower central core of the plant, probably as a result of the increase in direct light levels to the middle of the bush, when the leggy branches began to splay out to the sides. It's another encouraging sign that these plants will successfully rejuvenate after pruning, so that next summer the lavender rondel is a sea of shapely flowering bushes. But as I'm cutting, I'm wondering if these very low sprouting shoots mean I should be pruning back even further. I'm leaving roughly 10 to 11 inch lengths, and generally it's safe to cut hardwood back to as much as 8 or 9 inches immediately after flowering. I remember walking past the forecourt of a car showroom 30 years ago and saw the ground crew performing what looked like the butchery of a strip of lavender hedge. They took it down to 6 inches of hardwood in seconds with a hedge cutter. 6 weeks later, it was covered in miraculous, healthy new growth. Am I overthinking this by diligently pruning back each individual stem? Usually, I would quickly and effectively trim our plants into soft mounds with the shears. But this slow-living approach gives me a great opportunity to make observations, such as how surprisingly different the growth habits are between individual plants, and to discover the kinds of insects and other wildlife living in the bushes. I thought slugs were supposed to be repelled by the strong aromatic force of lavender. Well, this is me going to wash my hand after inadvertently grasping a concealed and particularly large moist slug in a bunch of lavender. This cutting approach is also a chance to note the kinds of flowers that have cell-seeded beneath the lavender. There are lots of Welsh poppy seedlings, flowers which delight us by spreading around the garden, all from one plant from a dear and departed friend, which surprises me as these beds are very dry in summer, not conditions I would expect Welsh poppies to enjoy, and this is a chance to note any problems which have hitherto gone undetected. I've realised some bushes have alarming roots resembling banyan trees. I think I know what's happened. Our problem is we garden on heavy clay soil, a growing medium that lavender detests, a growing medium that most of the plants I love detest. For optimal health, lavender needs excellent drainage. Knowing the ground here becomes waterlogged most winters, I did originally dig out this bed to a considerable width and depth, and we reconditioned the soil structure by adding in loads of compost and gravel. I also mounted the mixture up in the centre of the semicircular beds before planting to elevate the young lavenders as much as possible to aid drainage. Over time, the mounted clay, compost and gravel mixture seems to have washed away in places, leaving exposed lavender roots. So I will add a fresh compost mixture to cover and protect the root system. At this point, I'm realising just how much weeding I will need to do. There is a lot of oxalis, although I do enjoy the way this weed gives the brickwork path a lived-in look, and oxalis seeds are nutrient-rich bounty for ants, which in turn encourage the frogs and toads to hunt in the garden. Friends, do you have a nemesis weed? A persistent offender in this garden is horsetail, a perennial native to the UK that spreads by spores and rhizomes. Its extensive horizontal underground structure makes it almost impossible to dig out completely, but it does have to be admired as a living fossil, belonging to an ancient class of plants that predate dinosaurs. Another hardy lavender entirely suitable for the hardwood pruning method is the naturally occurring hybrid originating mainly in southeast France called Lavandula cross intermedia. Confusingly, this is also known as Dutch lavender, but perhaps better recognised by the name Lavandin. Its growth habit is generally larger and more robust than English lavender and begins flowering a little later in summer. One way to differentiate Lavandin varieties from angustifolia cultivars is to check for branching stems. We introduced a Lavandin cultivar called Phenomenal to our garden earlier this year when I created a new semicircular flower bed at the edge of the patio facing the English lavender rondel. The stepping stones provide a base for the changing seasonal container displays and access points to the double row of pots at the back. We'd imagined the flower stems of Phenomenal developing into the classic semi-spherical silhouette, but no, they have been straining lopsidedly over the lawn towards the sun because our two incredible container-grown dahlias have developed to such generous proportions they block out far more morning light than I'd anticipated when I first planted those tiny tubers. As they've been featured on our channel, I guess we should call them YouTubers. But despite the unexpected shade issue, our dahlias are a complete starbursting joy, fabulously floriferous and beguiling to bees and butterflies. We would change nothing about the arrangement. So although the growth habit of our Lavandin is rather lopsided, it is still charming in its own way, and the plant will hopefully benefit from additional sunlight over late autumn, winter and early spring when the dahlias are stored away as tubers. Phenomenal's refreshing scent, delightfully antiqued lilac blue blooms and animated bumblebee visitors make the plants utterly engaging. How is it that there's something so deeply relaxing about watching other beings being terribly busy? To hold back the light-seeking blooms, I created a little retaining wall of bamboo floral hoops. You may recall from previous videos, I have also used these hoops to train the climbing rose, which is a work in progress, and even to extend the height of containers when planting summer annuals above perennial spring bulbs. The hoops are very versatile and inexpensive garden aids. The planting in this new border is a gentle medley of predominantly violet and blue flowers in harmony with the Lavandin hues, including agapanthus, asters, salvia and verbena bonariensis, all offering a plentiful pollen and nectar supply to bounty-seeking insects. The border is framed by the soft primrose yellow of Cosmos xanthos to the north side and the large dazzling stars of Dahlia honca fragile to the south. When the Lavandin finishes flowering, we will trim away about a third of the green leafage and softwood stems for a compact domed shape. As well as differences in growth habit between English lavender and Lavandin, these plants also diverge in the effects they have on the human mind and sensibilities. English lavender has a delicate scent and calming, relaxant qualities, whereas Lavandin exudes a more powerful fragrance with natural camphor compounds which act as a stimulant. So not all dried lavender or lavender oils are created equal. For a soothing, restful night's sleep, we need angustifolia lavender under the pillow, not the stimulating scent of Lavandin lavender. And if we put the English lavender sachet in our woolens drawer to keep moths away, our clothing will be fragrant, but it will not deter moths from our wool and silk garments. It is the camphor-infused scent of dried Lavandin that helps repel moths, and Lavandin oil candles are used as mosquito deterrents, but this principle does not apply to the living nectar-laden plants, which attract butterflies and moths from considerable distances. And just as you get them in focus, they always fly away. So let's push through with a hardwood pruning. Apologies in advance as some footage is about to become particularly grainy because the phone camera was inadvertently set to a low resolution and slow motion mode. So this footage has actually been speeded up by 8,000%. But we hope you'll forgive the quality because just as we are amateur but eager gardeners, we are also eager but amateur videographers. I know you'll be kind. Sending out a heartfelt thank you to everyone who subscribes, supports and engages with us here at Appleby Fern Sea. We hope you are having a successful summer of gardening and that those battling weather extremes are managing to keep precious plants surviving. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Until next time, friends, we wish you all flowerful times and nature-soothed minds.